Arrogant attorney insults teen in court regrets it when he exposes the truth. The only sound that could be heard in the courtroom was the steady ticking of the clock that was mounted on the wall. As the high-profile case of State vs. Harper was being played out, there was a palpable sense of tension in the air. A tall, soft-spoken youngster with a mop of unruly brown hair, Ethan Harper, who was 17 years old, was in the center of everything that was going on for him. As he sat at the table belonging to the defendant, his fists were firmly clutched together, and his gaze darted rapidly across the room. Marcus Caldwell, the attorney representing the plaintiff, was standing opposite him. He was a guy who was well known for his sharp tongue, faultless suits, and an ego that could fill the courtroom twice over. Caldwell was a guy who had established his name on destroying opponents with a combination of charm, cunning, and pure terror. He was a legend in the world of law, despite the fact that he had never lost a case. He was not going to allow a young person to damage his impeccable record. Ethan was suspected of breaking into the computers of a big technology business, obtaining critical information, and then selling it on the dark web. The case itself was a complicated one. Caldwell was certain in his intention to make an example of him, since the evidence against him seemed to be overwhelming. Caldwell strutted about the courtroom like a peacock as the trial started, his voice oozing with contempt as he moved around the proceedings. With a sneer on his face, he addressed Ethan, referring to him as a tech-savvy delinquent and a wannabe hacker who bit off more than he could chew. There was laughter from the audience, and even the judge raised an eyebrow in response to the attorney's dramatic performance. Ethan, on the other hand, did not speak, and his expression was inscrutable. However, while the proceedings of the trial continued, an unexpected event took place. Arrogance on the part of Caldwell started to backfire. In the course of the cross-examination, he attempted to trip Ethan up by asking him a number of questions in fast succession, with the intention of revealing the teen's purported lack of understanding. Ethan, on the other hand, responded to each question with ease and accuracy, maintaining a steady and self-assured tone of voice. It was almost as if he had been anticipating just this moment the whole time. Then the shocking revelation arrived. Sarah Bennett, a young and very inexperienced attorney, who was Ethan's defense counsel, appeared before the court and summoned him to the stand. The first thing that she did was inquire about his history, including the fact that he had taught himself to code when he was only 10 years old, that he had been honored with many accolades for his cybersecurity projects, and that he had even been given internships by some of the most prestigious technology organizations in the world. Caldwell sneered and dismissed Ethan's achievements as irrelevant, despite the fact that the gallery listened in incredulous silence. Sarah, however, was not quite completed. Ethan was given a paper, and she requested that he provide an explanation of it before the court. Then, after taking a few deep breaths, Ethan started talking. He stated that the document contained a record of the IP addresses that were used to access the servers of the technology business on the night that the security breach was allegedly committed. Through the application of his skills, Ethan had been able to track the IP addresses back to their origin, which was a server situated in a downtown office building that was unremarkable. What's the catch? It was Marcus Caldwell himself who owned the office building. He was the one in question. Many people in the courtroom let out gasps. Caldwell's face became pale as Ethan proceeded to disclose that the attorney had planned the whole breach as part of an intricate conspiracy to frame Ethan and destroy the technology business, which had been investigating Caldwell for theft. Ethan's revelation caused Caldwell's credibility to be called into question. The truth had been uncovered by Ethan when he was searching through the servers of the corporation. But rather than going public with his discovery, he had waited for the appropriate time to expose Caldwell in court. While Caldwell made an effort to raise an objection, the evidence was indisputable. Caldwell was placed in handcuffs and his career was in ruins within a few hours after the court issued an order for a recess. A gaze of unadulterated hate was directed on Ethan as he was being brought out of the courtroom. Yet, the young man merely grinned. It was the first time in Ethan's life that he got the sensation that he had really altered the course of events. It was reported in the media all throughout the nation, and Ethan became an overnight star as a result of the case. As a result of his courageous stance against one of the most influential lawyers in the state, he was acclaimed as a hero by the IT businesses that were eager to give him employment opportunities. On the other hand, the true triumph for Ethan was the realization that he had put his abilities to good use, and that there are moments when even the most insignificant voice may bring down the most powerful behemoth. The media circus that ensued after the trial was unlike anything that Ethan had ever encountered before. Reporters were eager for interviews with the teen hacker who took down a legal titan, and news trucks were camped out in front of his little suburban house. The use of hashtags such as Ethan the Hero and Justice for Harper caused social media to erupt, and memes of Marcus Caldwell's surprised look in the courtroom became popular overnight. In contrast, Ethan was completely overpowered. Because he was not used to being in the limelight, the unexpected popularity seemed like a blade with two edges. Marcus Caldwell, on the other hand, had a precipitous and ruthless fall from favor. Following his disbarment and the various counts of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy that he was facing, he became the topic of a large number of investigative publications. His previously impeccable reputation was shattered into ruins, and a large number of his prominent customers turned their backs on him at the same time. He had formerly walked through courtrooms like a king, but now his name was linked with corruption, and he was considered a pariah despite his former status. Caldwell, on the other hand, was not the sort of person to lose without a fight. He started making plans for his vengeance while he was incarcerated. Even after his departure, he maintained contacts with those who owed him favors and former customers who had secrets to hide. No matter what it took, he was resolute in his intention to get revenge on Ethan for humiliating him. Over the course of many weeks, Ethan made an effort to adapt to his new world. He accepted a lucrative job offer from one of the technology businesses that he had admired for years. But the need to live up to his newly acquired reputation was a significant burden for him. He was no longer just a young man with a love for coding. Rather, he had evolved into a symbol of justice and a model for young people all over the world who want to become hackers. During the course of one evening, Ethan was working late in his home office when he got an email from an unknown sender. "You think you've won, but the game isn't over," was expressed in the subject line of the email. The letter included a number of enigmatic hints, as well as a scary threat, which read as follows: "You exposed me, but I know your secrets as well. Let's see how you deal with the truth, shall we?" As soon as Ethan understood that the email had to have come from Caldwell, his heart began to accelerate. Over the course of his first inquiry, Ethan had failed to discover a secret server, but the indications pointed to its existence. Ethan, who was resolute in his pursuit of the truth, went down into the digital rabbit hole and used his abilities to locate the source of the server. The discovery that he made stuns him, not just about Caldwell, but also concerning some of the most influential individuals in the city. The server was a treasure mine of data that might be used against them. Those involved in a complex web of corruption included politicians, chief executive officers, and even a few high-ranking individuals in the law enforcement sector. Caldwell had been using the information to blackmail them for years, and he had been using it to establish his position as one of the most feared lawyers in the state. Ethan was aware that he needed to take action quickly. It is possible that this information may endanger lives, or even worse, put him in jeopardy if it were to get into the wrong hands. On the other hand, if he disclosed it, he may end up being a target himself. When Ethan was caught between doing what was right and protecting himself, he went to the one person he could trust, Sarah Bennett, the defense attorney who had been at his side throughout the trial. At first, Sarah was afraid to proceed. Her tone was marked by a hint of anxiety as she addressed Ethan, saying, "This is bigger than both of us. In the event that we make this information public, there is no way to know who could come after us." On the other hand, Ethan was unwavering. It was his response that he said, "I didn't start this to back down now. Caldwell will emerge victorious if we do not reveal the truth. And I'm not going to allow it to go place." Ethan and Sarah came up with a strategy all by themselves. In order to ensure that the story would be disseminated to the general public without directly compromising themselves, they would provide the material to a reputable investigative journalist. The journalist, a seasoned reporter by the name of Claire Morales, was well known for her courageous exposes and had a reputation for safeguarding her sources by maintaining confidentiality. It was the next morning that the news broke. The city was thrown into pandemonium as headlines shouted about the corruption scandal of the century. All of this occurred simultaneously. The officials who were involved made a valiant effort to salvage their careers, but the evidence was too devastating to be ignored. While the public demanded accountability, arrests were made, resignations were submitted, and arrests were made. As Caldwell watched from his cell at the prison, he became more enraged. As his empire began to fall apart, he had no one else to blame but himself when it happened. When he was at his lowest point, however, he was unable to refrain from committing one more act of rebellion. The last message that he delivered to Ethan was as follows: "You may have won the battle, but the war is not over. I will be taking a look." In spite of the threats made by Caldwell, Ethan has decided not to live in fear. He was triumphant after facing up against one of the most powerful men in the city and becoming victorious himself. Using his abilities to assist others and advocate for ethical hacking techniques, he started the process of rebuilding his life with the assistance of Sarah, Claire, and his family. After a number of years had passed, Ethan would consider the trial to be the defining moment in his experience. He had learned the significance of standing up for what was right, even when the odds were stacked against him, as a result of such an experience. And despite the fact that he was aware that there would always be individuals in the world who were like to Caldwell, he was also aware that the truth, regardless of how deeply it was buried, could always be unearthed. Marcus Caldwell, on the other hand, was a guy who was a bitter and shattered person, and he spent the remainder of his days in jail. A cautionary story that serves as a reminder that no one is above the law, not even the most pompous attorney in the courtroom. His name, which was previously associated with power and distinction, ended up becoming a cautionary tale. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more inspiring content.